Hi everybody, Happy New Year 2024. Do you love your dot thermometer? Well, you should, because they're great. They're one of the best ways to cook a piece of meat and monitor the internal temperature. They're highly accurate, but I can't say a lot for their durability, especially if you make the mistake of putting a roast into the oven while the probe is plugged in and the main unit is plugged into the probe. Because what I did was I dragged my main unit off the edge of the counter, putting the roast into the oven, and the main unit hit the ground, and it must have hit right where the probe plugs in here. Now, if I plug the probe in, it still says no probe, because internally I've damaged my dot thermometer. Because, like all things electronic, it has soldering connections, and there's not a lot of strength in those solder connections. And if you yank on the probe wire, you'd probably get the same result, which is to snap loose the internal connections. So the way to take this apart is 1, 2, 3, 4 little screws. Now you have to take off, you should take off the battery compartment. Maybe you don't have to. But then also to get to the bottom screws, you take off the little kickstand. And the way you do that is you kind of spread the two ends apart. You kind of pull them apart, and then one side will pop out and then the other. And then you want to be careful taking off the top lid, or the front face, so to speak, because the connector port goes through this little connector here. You want to pry loose the left side as you're looking at the display, and then kind of push it towards the right just to kind of baby that connector, which is probably already messed up. So here we can see the connector, and you can see wiggle, 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 wiggle. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Now there's a couple of solder connection points. One is a piece of solder that comes off the face up to the side of this port. There's one on this side too, boom. And there's a little tiny one in the back, and I think that's part of the problem too. I think these two are loose. What I'm going to try to do is use my trusty soldering pen to try to melt the solder and get it put back together. And maybe I can fix it. And if I do, then I'll do a follow-up video. All right? Like I said, get a dot thermometer, but be careful with it. Don't ever move your food when the main unit is connected to the probe. That is the recipe for disaster.